We've got a lot of folks showing up. I'm inclined to get going just again I always like to reward the people who show up on time and to honor the time of the presenters who we, told them that we'd be very timely for. And so welcome everyone and people as they come in to our, is this our third or fourth webinar? We started doing these monthly at the end of 2020 as a way to connect with all the folks that are interested in all the work that's happening around air quality. And there's been a lot of work happening. And so we're really excited about this, how well attended and the enthusiasm and participation for air quality work. So that always excites me. But and we are especially honored and excited to have Chair Deborah Kafoury from Multnomah County here with us today. And I just want to say a few words before I start. I mean, when I started this work 10 years ago, it's really obvious, industry pollution is the most obvious air pollution issue. We also talk a lot about smog and other things, but I think, the idea of seeing what, the air pollution in our midst has always been a real challenge. And the county, I've just had so much gratification to be able to work with the county over the last 10 years since county staff had sat on the same Portland Air Toxics Advisory Committee that I had sat on from 2009 to 2011, where DEQ, the Department of Environmental Quality, showed us the whole picture of air pollution problems in the Portland metro region. And particularly the county came out of that work with a real commitment and dedication to trying to do what at that point really the state, this isn't a state bashing, I'm not trying to do that, but what really, for the Portland Air Toxic Solutions Advisory Committee, really no solutions were put forward at that time. So, but we learned a lot about the problem, and the county, I was so heartened to see our county government really take it as seriously as I did when I saw that picture and think that we really needed to do something. But I will say, I mean, as a person who was living next to a very large industrial facility, who lived next to the industrial sanctuary, certainly the lens of industrial pollution was the lens that I first looked at this problem. And I learned a lot though about, the most dangerous pollution in our air isn't necessarily the most obvious. And it was really through the county work and the dedication of not only the chair's office on this issue, but the environmental health folks at the county that really helped start helping us see more what was most dangerous in the air and what we could do about it. And out of that understanding and a real commitment to trying to protect county residents from the toxic air came really important initiatives dealing with pollution that we really don't think about and we don't see it as obviously. One of that is wood smoke. And certainly we all saw it very obviously in the summer when we're dealing with these huge fire events, but we don't necessarily think about it when we, put those logs out and light them up and have the ambiance of a beautiful fire to sit at either in our homes or, out in our yards. And diesel pollution is another thing we don't really see, and it's one of the biggest sources of toxic pollution in our region. And it always frustrated me that we couldn't see it in the same way we could see industrial pollution. So there's a couple things on our agenda tonight. I'm really excited to hear more from the county. They've really vanguarded and spearheaded work on the wood smoke in our region, as well as on the diesel issue with their diesel contracting and procurement standards. And I'm really excited to introduce you to our team of folks behind our new website, because we really wanted, we brought this charge to this team from the Mapping Action Collective, and we said, can you make diesel pollution as visible as the industry pollution? Can you give people a sense of it in their neighborhoods and in their communities in the same way that people can see that industry pollution? And so that was the charge we gave them, and they did an amazing job, and there's a lot of work behind that. We we really wanted to get a chance to show and share that work. So I'm going to quit talking. And I would like to introduce now somebody who has just been an incredible leader on this issue. From the early days of the Moss study, before the governor took action, Chair Deborah Kafoury took the lead to really make a statement to our state that it was imperative that our state protect the county residents and all Oregonians from toxic air pollution. And she's been leading on this issue ever since. And her leadership has made a broad base of county resources incredible partners in this work. And I really am incredibly appreciative for that. So no further ado, Chair Deborah Kafoury, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Mary, and thank you to your team for inviting me to speak today. I will just say that when Mary sent me an email and asked me to participate, I jumped at the chance because I feel like it's COVID all the time. So if I don't have to answer questions about why people can't get vaccinated yet, I am super excited to have a conversation about something else, and seriously about something that is so crucial and tied to COVID, as we all know. So it still is related, but it's something that a topic that I'm happy to spend some time talking with you all about. And I just want to, thanks to that very kind introduction, I want to also do a reciprocal love, share my love for Neighbors for Clean Air, because I really believe that pound for pound, Neighbors for Clean Air is one of the most effective environmental organizations in Oregon. Over the past 6 years, we have made, as Mary has talked about, we've made substantial progress on air quality in our local community and across the state. And Neighbors for Clean Air, because of their relentless advocacy and smart, fact-based approach to policymaking, is responsible for a lot of that success. It was Mary who was one of the first people in our state to really pull those green blinders off of our eyes to help us see and to realize that Oregon's dirty, dangerous secret was the quality of the air we breathe. So I'm very grateful for our invaluable partnership and for the work that you continue to do and the work that we will do in the future. Since I became county chair, I have let one simple idea guide me on the area of air quality. And that is that we all deserve to breathe clean air all of the time. But the truth is that we don't have clean air to breathe. And as a result, people suffer. People get sick with lung disease, heart disease, asthma, and people even die as a result of dirty air. So as I personally learn more and more about the kind of air that Oregonians and Multnomah County residents actually breathe, the question became, what do we do and where do we start? And to answer that question, we looked at data. When we assess the public health risks that dirty air poses, two pollutants stand out: diesel particulate matter and wood smoke. On one hand, these two pollutants are distributed across our entire airshed. So every single one of us who lives in the Portland metro region lives in a hot spot, with the ambient levels from these pollutants many, many times higher than the state's health-based benchmarks. But on the other hand, diesel, PM, and wood smoke are distributed unequally across our region. Some communities suffer from higher concentrations of these pollutants than others. And here, again, I believe that the data is illuminating. If you live in an area with a higher proportion of Latinx residents, your community has a disproportionately high concentration of wood smoke particulates. In those same neighborhoods, diesel particulate matter is 2.5 times what it would be in a predominantly white area. And for neighborhoods with the highest proportion of Black residents, that dismal, infuriating statistic for diesel pollution is 3 times that of white dominant areas. So the data makes it clear that diesel, PM emissions, and wood smoke emissions present the most public health risk and pose the greatest hazards to environmental justice and equity. So now that we can see the shape of this problem, we know what we need to do. We need to reduce diesel particulate matter, and we need to reduce wood smoke emissions. But it's not enough for us to point out the problem and wait for the state to do better. We are at the point where we have to take the lead in our own community and figure out what we can do better in our own backyard. I'll admit that our room to run on diesel emissions is limited because of the Clean Air Act preemption and because diesel equipment is really expensive. Multnomah County's own fleet of diesel vehicles provided the most immediate opportunity for us to reduce emissions, and I'm proud to say that we have already taken the step of cleaning up our fleet by retrofitting or replacing virtually all of our diesel equipment. The county also identified another area.
And remember the eviction problems in Oregon.
Is someone else hearing feedback? Yeah, all right, thank you. Sorry about that. So along with taking care of our own fleet, Multnomah County also identified another area where we can make a difference, and that is contracting. As a buyer of construction services, we saw an opportunity to leverage our position to demand clean diesel equipment on our construction projects. And we have been doing quite a few of those lately. So that led to the creation of the Clean Air Construction Collaborative. It's a partnership between Multnomah County, City of Portland, Metro, Port of Portland, and Washington County to adopt a single set of clean diesel procurement standards for large construction projects among these participating jurisdictions. And I have to give a shout out to Portland Mayor Ted Wheeler, because he offered up the city's administrative capacity and funding to create a single hub to administer this program. And that has been up and running since late 2018. The other exciting thing that happened recently is that our program has become the basis for the state's contracting standards for major construction projects. And this is in addition to the regulations that were placed on on-road trucks that was passed in House Bill 2007. There is a lot more work to be done if we want to come close to eliminating diesel particulate matter in our communities, but these are major regulatory steps aimed right at the source of the problem. The other important thing to note is that taking these steps to mitigate diesel emissions isn't just the right thing to do, it's also financially prudent. Yay. In our studies of diesel emission reduction projects, we found that for every $1 of investment in cleaner equipment, the community gets $10 back in public health benefits. So programs like our Clean Air Construction Partnership make sense on many, many levels. As for Woodsmoke, I have to give a shout out to Washington County, and we followed their lead and developed a Woodsmoke curtailment program in 2018. That program aims to reduce wood smoke pollution on winter days between October 1st and March 1st, when air quality is forecast to be the worst because of air stagnation. On those poor air quality days, we ban wood burning altogether. Now, I'm sure, like many of you, I grew up here, and I grew up being warmed by wood fires on cold winter days. But once I learned how dangerous wood smoke can be, the sense of nostalgia that I still get from the smell of a wood fire does not outweigh the harm it can cause. In fact, this winter, we've had several conversations in my own house about the fact that we should not be having wood fires in our fireplace. But well, I can take that up with my family later. And I know that a lot of county residents don't know about the harms of wood smoke. So we've taken steps to educate the public. Thanks to some funding that we received from DEQ, we are rolling out an educational campaign that has already sent literature to virtually every household in Portland, and we're beefing up this advertising campaign in East County as well. So between these actions, we've made an appreciable difference in the amount of diesel and wood smoke emissions. But let me be clear, we are nowhere near done. There is a wide gulf between air that's less dirty and air that's clean. And the county will keep working to close that gap. On the diesel front, I want to mention my colleague, Commissioner Sushila Jayapal. She represents District 2, which is North and Northeast Portland. And she's been working with the state legislature to make recommendations on how we can help businesses invest in cleaner equipment more quickly. And on the Woodsmoke front, thanks to advocacy for Multnomah County residents. In fact, I just recently met with Woodsmoke is Pollution PDX, a group of several of you on this call. And thanks to their suggestions, Multnomah County is going to convene a Woodsmoke working group that will evaluate potential policies and programs that we need, not just to reduce the ambient concentrations of wood smoke, but also to mitigate the local impacts that people experience in their neighborhoods. The work that remains, and there is a lot, doesn't and shouldn't take away from acknowledging how far we've come in the past 6 years. Oregon is one of only 12 states in the entire country that has a health-based air toxic permitting program. And we are only the second state in the country to regulate in-use diesel trucks. And other local governments have joined Multnomah County in stepping up to take action. But the work ahead of us is urgent. The choking smoke from this past fall's wildfires was a visceral reminder of how the climate crisis makes our job of cleaning up the air more complex, more difficult, and more pressing. It also showed us how people in our community who are already vulnerable bear the brunt of dirty air because of where they live, what they do for work, or their ability to protect themselves from the elements. So this is no time to rest on our laurels. We need to keep pushing forward. Clean air is a matter of health. It's a matter of equity and justice, and it's a matter of our future that we can't afford to ignore today. So with that, I am happy to take questions or to hear comments from you. And I'm very excited to be joined on this call by John Vashetinsky, who runs our Office of Sustainability, and Nadège Dubuisson. She challenges my horrible French accent. She's one of our amazing staff members in our health department, and they can help me answer any questions that you might have for us today.
I have a question.
Wait, so if you could put your questions in the chat, that's probably the best way of making use of our time. So we will be asking as many questions as we possibly can. We have one that's waiting for Chair Kafoury now. The first one is, what industries is Multnomah County thinking of? Restrictions placed on large businesses located in Multnomah County, which may push jobs outside our community. So I guess that's from the Multnomah County website. I don't know if that's specific enough of a question, Deborah.
I can chime in for just a second, maybe help clarify that, since it's
Thank you.
the Woodsmoke page. So I think that was pulled in relation to the Clean Air Act and the fact that there are national ambient air quality standards that could further affect the county if we're not able to attain them, specifically related to particulate matter. So there are consequences that as an airshed, if we're not able to stay at what's called attainment, there could be greater consequences onto business and transportation and other areas. So hopefully that helps clarify the question a little bit more. And I don't know if Deborah or Chair Kafoury or John have anything to add there, but a little more context.
Yeah,
John,
that sounds right.
in?
That's right, and I think that's well put.
Great, and then the next one is pretty simple. It just says, what is the contact information for Woodsmoke is Portland PDX?
Yeah, and if Alicia Cohen, I think, is here, she might be able to speak to that.
I didn't hear that. I didn't hear a couple of words in the question.
What is the contact information for Woodsmoke is pollution?
Oh,
PDX?
contact information.
Would you mind just putting that in the chat for folks?
Yeah, sure will.
That'd be great. Okay. And
yeah, I guess
then,
I should have given them more of a shout out because there are several members on this call, and I know that this is a good opportunity for you to organize additional members as well.
great. The other question is, what regulations can the county implement for enhanced air quality systems in new and existing residential and public buildings along major traffic corridors?
All right, smart people on my team. John W., I know you've given this a lot of thought.
Yes. I think that there is a connection between building, like how you build and what systems you put into buildings, especially
John,
when
I
you're,
hate to tell you this, but the audio is a little, you're doing that Terminator thing
voice?
again.
Oh,
You're
God.
scratchy.
The robotic voice.
Okay, I'm trying again. I'm just going to use my computer audios, but if you hear a 4-year-old in the background, my apologies. So the building systems can have a big impact, especially when you're close to major roadways. What we've learned from CARB is every 500 feet that you're closer if you're kind of in a danger zone if you're within 500 feet in terms of air quality, and so especially in that very close in to a highway area, it could be very you can get a lot of negative air quality impacts. And there's some things that can be done, even just having the air intake for a building on the opposite side from where the traffic is can help somewhat, but then there's also more advanced air quality systems that can be put in place into buildings to filter out that pollution. So we saw that with Harriet Tubman School, where the Portland Public School System implemented a very advanced system. And then there's a legislative concept this session I'm hearing that would require publicly funded buildings to have enhanced HVAC systems to mitigate outdoor air pollution. So this is definitely, I would say, very cutting edge area of research, and I think it's been made pretty urgent by the wildfire smoke that we experienced in the fall. Not to mention just the day-to-day pollution that we experience.
Great. Anybody else want to take that on from the county as well? John, you did. I don't see what you could add, but we're good. Okay. And I think Chair Kafoury, you've already mentioned this a bit, but will Multnomah County ordinances apply to Portland? They're pretty much a lot of overlap, but
Yes, and Multnomah, we do have separate areas of governance, and I see someone asked about the cities are responsible for building codes, for example, but the county's ordinances do, and we have extensive legal vetting to ensure that if we do pass an ordinance, that it will cover the entire county, not just the city of Portland, but the other cities and then unincorporated.
great. And then thanks for taking all of these questions, by the way. A few more. Will Multnomah County consider outlawing outdoor fire pits, especially in the summer months?
I think there's a lot of different ideas out there about Woodsmoke, and that is one of the reasons why we want to get a work group together so that they can vet different proposals. And I'm not going to say today, yeah, we're going to do that one, or no, we're not going to do that one. But I think evaluating all of the proposals based on ease of regulation and ease of us in enforcement, ease, how much things cost, what the outcome is going to be long term on how much wood smoke emissions will it reduce. So the work group, we think, will look at all of those different areas.
Mm-hmm. And sort of a related question, people are noting that with COVID, gathering around fire pits has been really important for people socially to just connect together. Do you know if there's been any uptick since COVID?
Nadej?
In Woodsmoke?
I can tell you that anecdotally, absolutely. I'm getting a lot of calls, a lot of emails, even witnessing it myself in neighborhoods or on walks. Being someone who looks at particulate matter data every day for the daily average, I can honestly say that I don't see a huge difference compared to last season or the season before, but I'm looking at a total number, right? So it doesn't necessarily parse out the sources. So it could be, that driving is less, but Woodsmoke is higher. So this is a question that hopefully, we can connect with our partners at the Department of Environmental Quality who are, who do more monitoring and who have a little bit of better handle on some of that analysis. And I think that's a really good question and one that we ask ourselves every day. But looking at just the daily averages, it's comparable. But again, there's a lot of other factors like weather and all that go into to our daily averages and seeing those levels. So it's a harder question to answer with certainty, but hopefully that helps.
Great. And this is another sort of dovetail question, particularly you were talking about air quality monitoring. Someone has a question about, basically they say there was very little air quality monitoring in the downtown area, which is surrounded by freeways and downtown streets with diesel vehicles. Are you aware of any plans to help us all understand the level of air quality hazard we are living with?
So there's a lot of, one thing I would say is that there's a number of pollutants that are monitored for. There's 6 kind of criteria pollutants. There's air toxics pollutants that are a very large set of potential pollutants. But probably the one that's easiest to monitor for with lower cost equipment is particulate matter. And there's the Department of Environmental Quality has recently developed some lower cost sensors that they're deploying in a network, and it's called, they call them sensors, the OR is for Oregon. So that's a cool development and allows them to have a little bit more granular level data about particulate matter levels throughout the region. And then of course, there's the Purple Air Network, which is a relatively low cost sensor. I think it's maybe like $150 or something like that. And you can set it, it's very easy to set up, and it plugs into an online system. And then there's been some like DIY, really cool DIY projects as well. And those are starting to provide a lot more granularity on this issue of particulate matter. Which is really useful. And I think just to sort of acknowledge to what Nadej was saying, is it's, those averages don't necessarily speak to someone's experience at their home or, where they spend most of their time. If you have somebody that burns a lot that is in your neighborhood or next door or something like that, that can have a really bad impact on you. And, some of the advertising that the chair mentioned has included messaging tying Woodsmoke pollution to COVID and this impact that it has on our lungs. Both Woodsmoke and COVID can have on our lungs. So yeah, it's granularity just means like more fine level details, not just like what the ambient air quality is, but like what's the ambient air quality in a neighborhood or in a specific location. If that helps answer that question.
Great. I'm seeing one more question. The air quality and health standards for residential and public buildings should be led by Multnomah County Health Department and apply to all cities within the county. Yes? That's the question. Yes? So thoughts on that at all?
Seems like a leading question.
Yeah. I personally believe that Multnomah County should be able to, have authority over every single thing that happens in this county. But sometimes the lawyers and the cities have disagreements. We do, because we have a home rule charter at Multnomah County, have a different level of authority than some of the other counties do in our state. And we do try to put a lot of things under our public health authority, and as we are the local public health authority. Specifically, I don't know about that piece of it. John, do you have you looked into this with our legal team?
No, I haven't spent so much time with this particular idea, and again, I think it's something worth exploring, as you mentioned before, Chair, about with our work group. I would say I would just add one other thing too, that the building codes are not set locally. They're actually set by the state building codes division. And so unfortunately, there's a kind of shift. Setting building codes actually requires us to go and lobby the building codes division if there's something specific like this that we want to see on to how buildings are constructed.
And that's not to say we try to pass the buck. Understanding that other levels of government have different responsibilities does not mean that we will not fight for our community, push the state to be the best that they can be, because we do believe, you know, it's just not our residents that deserve to have clean air, everybody.
Seems like our moderator is having trouble.
Oh, I'm here. Sorry.
We couldn't hear you even though I could see you talking and you weren't on mute. Okay.
That's funny. So sorry about that. The joys of Zoom. I always joke about that I'll have it completely figured out once everyone is back to normal. That's when I'll be the expert. So the other question was about and I think this might be the last question for the chair, about the communications plan, like how to communicate all of this from the county to Multnomah County residents.
Yeah, we have done, as I talked about, and John talked a little bit about, we did get some money from DEQ to do some level of communication with our constituents. We know that there is a lot more education that needs to be done. We have been, I'll go back, this past year has been kind of overwhelming for us with COVID, and a lot of the same folks on public health that work on air quality issues have been, doing other things related to COVID and related to when the wildfires were here. So we've been a little strapped in terms of finances and in terms of staff, but it is a huge priority. And I would say as we enter our budget season right now, which we are entering into, that contacting my office, contacting the other county commissioners and saying that you want to see a budget ask, a proposal for education, because all we have to do is talk to one of our friends, family, or neighbors. People don't get that wood smoke is dangerous. Obviously, some people do, but I would say the vast majority of people don't. So we know that it's going to take a real strong effort, and it's going to take all of us and all of our voices coming together.
Thank you so much. And I really want to thank, again, Chair Kafoury for taking the time today and bringing so much staff with her. I will say I've had the pleasure and honor to work with John and Nadej, and they're really phenomenal. And I appreciate the chair's leadership to give them the time to do work on this stuff. So we're going to probably transition off. If there's any more questions for the county, feel free to put them in the chat, and we'll make sure that they get directed, or we get back to you with answers. It's been great to have them here, and I'm sure folks had some thoughts, but thank you again. I just can't appreciate the county's commitment to this more than I can say, so thank you. And we're going to now move over to our next topic, which is about, as I said, the visualization of diesel in our communities. As I said, it was a pretty short brief. I don't know, maybe it took us about 6 months to get the brief right, but where I had been introduced to this, I consider it sort of a Portland State University entity, but it's an independent nonprofit group called the Mapping Action Collective. And what I understood is they used, mapping technology and data visualization to help people better understand issues and solutions to issues. And one of the things that I knew, in fact, had to patiently wait while they completed, was that they took the whole street routes resource guide that was a pocket manual that distributed on the streets, and they digitized it and brought it online. And that was a pretty phenomenal project and illustration of the kind of work that they were capable of doing. And I've just really enjoyed this partnership. It's amazing to work with these incredible, smart people. So visualizing diesel pollution was a lot harder than any of us, I think, could understand. One member that was brought into the team as well was Lindsay Boyle, who is I'm going to get this wrong, postdoc, graduate student, doctoral candidate at Portland State University, under the leadership and direction of one of our key partners at Portland State University, Dr. Linda George, who's worked in this area. And Dr. George one day told me that a student had come to her and said that she, was interested in doing air quality work, but she also had this mathematician's background and data and data analysis. And I thought that's exactly what we need. And Lindsay Boyle completed this project, and I'm going to let her speak to it more because I'll just bungle it more than I bungled her introduction of even. But it was not easy. And one of the things that made the difference of this, besides the incredible team that put this together, was the ability to take new DEQ data, new Oregon-specific data, and integrate it into this tool. And they're going to talk more about this, but it really makes this a pretty astounding effort and outcome to have this information, because it took what the state had been working on for years and finally completed last spring, was an inventory data of equipment, a survey of the equipment that's actually used in Oregon, so that we could have a better understanding of our actual emissions in Oregon, as opposed to using EPA averages or EPA assumptions about the age of equipment that's currently on the roads. And Lindsay will talk a little bit more about the discrepancies between what the EPA assumptions would have said versus what we found out from this DEQ survey. I want to show you something though, because I think it's also a nice bridge between the county's work and the county discussion and this. And Kristen, if you don't mind putting up our website just really quickly, I want to show you something that's a really miraculous piece of this website that probably doesn't explain itself as well. But Kristen, if you can slide the slider all the way to the left. This is a picture of what the DEQ, we've been looking at this picture for almost 10 years. This is the picture of diesel, assumptions of diesel emissions from off-road sources in the Portland metro area. It's very red and dark. If we had all diesel sources, basically this is the map that shows our whole Portland metro area light up in red in terms of the highest level of risk due to diesel emissions. So what we were able to do with this website, and also what we want to do is we want this not to just be a picture of the problem. We've been looking at the picture of the problem for a really long time. What we really hope to do with this website was put a picture and visualization of the solution and of our North Star on where we could go. So if you slide that slider all the way to the right, what it shows us is the improvement we could make in this area if we took the Multnomah County led initiative on the construction standards. If we took that and applied it across the diesel emissions as we understand them, this is how much we could clean up our air. This is our North Star. But unfortunately, this pollution is, one project at a time in each of our neighborhoods. And so it's been a really hard thing, I think, to get the same level of community engagement and community mobilization on dealing with. But there is real tangible improvements that we could realize if we could get every single construction project to meet the same standards that the county led on for county led and now all the local municipal government led projects. So that's what's really exciting to me, is that we have a visualization of not only what the problem is, but where we can go. So I'm going to hand it over to, I can't remember what our sequence was, but I'll let Tim and Lindsay kind of introduce themselves a little bit more to give them better opportunity to give them credit for their work, and then take you through the website and some of the work behind it. So thank you, everybody.
Thanks, Mary. Yeah, I'll start us off, and then I'll let Mapping Action Collective and Tim jump in at the end. So I was going to show you a little bit more about the website that was just up. So Kristen, can you put that back up? And thanks, Mary, for the introduction. I just recently graduated with my master's from Portland State and was working with Dr. George there for the last 2.5 years. And what I worked on most of the time while I was there is this website and kind of the content that informed this website. So Mary kind of gave an overview of this kind of modeling result. You know, ultimately, we were limited by, you know, we used the Portland, as Mary mentioned, we used the Portland Air Toxics Solutions map as kind of a baseline, and using some modeling software that's out there by the EPA called MOVES, I was able to kind of model the % reduction we could see if all construction equipment was using Tier 4 or equivalent engines, which means the cleanest available engines. So what I do want to show you is the mapping tool. So yeah, Kristen, you could navigate. And this website is live, so hopefully some of you have had a chance to look at this website. If not, I highly recommend playing around with it after this webinar. It's what'sinarear.org. And this mapping tool is pretty neat. So it pops up with some instructions, but you can exit out of that. Essentially what we set out to do was try to visualize some of that potential diesel impact from construction sites in the best way that we could. So there are a lot of limitations to doing something like this. So emissions from diesel at a construction site vary because of a lot of factors, including, you know, what kinds of equipment are on site, how long a project is, how big a project is. And so it's really hard to predict or estimate actual emissions observed at a site, but we kind of wanted to more generally try to characterize some of that. So this tool was born, and essentially you can put in a point, you can search by address, or you can select a point on the map. Kristen, if you want to just, for an example, in the search bar, show Portland's, like type in Portland State University, and it'll put the pin over there, just as an example. And we are limiting this tool, or we did limit this tool to the city of Portland, because we are using the permit data set that comes directly from the city's Bureau of Developmental Services, and so that is limited to the city of Portland. So the data that's used for this website is really dependent on that, because we don't have, you know, access to the construction permits any other way. So that's why the border is Portland and not kind of the metro area, because the different cities have different jurisdictions that oversee that. But essentially, when you put in an address or select a point, you get this view, which shows the permits, the construction permits that are currently active in some way around that site. And you can change on the left there. You can change the size of your bubble with that slider. And if you scroll down a little bit, Kristen, you can see a couple more on the menu on the left. You can see a little bit more parameters that you can customize. Yeah, so you can kind of filter by, you know, what years you want to include. And the points that pop up on this map are color coded, and they're one of 3 colors, which are noted on the left there. They essentially take each construction permit and rank them from low, medium, or high, which is kind of a proxy for potential diesel emissions that you could be exposed to at and around that site. Again, we're not like predicting actual emissions observed, but we developed an equation that if you scroll a little bit on the left there, that talks a little bit more about what goes into that equation. Since we are limited to the permit data for this kind of categorization, we really relied on like square footage. We relied on square footage and what else? Can you, sorry, can you go to the actual algorithm, Kristen? It's hard to, so under algorithm, yeah. So right there, we have square footage, number of stories, so that gets into how tall a building is, and then whether or not it included demolition as part of the project. So we know from research and as well as some data validation in the field that demolition tends to come with more equipment and heavy duty equipment that has higher emission rates. So that's in there. And then the status refers to kind of where, if it's an active construction site or not. So using these pieces of information, which are available in the permit data set that I mentioned, we were able to kind of categorize each permit into a low, medium, or high potential diesel impact. So, and then if you can click on any of the permits here to get a little bit more information about the project. It kind of tells you the description, whatever they entered in, again, on the permit application, but it can give you a little bit more information on what it is. And you can see, what's neat about this is that you can see what's happening ahead of time potentially in your neighborhood. So, so it will include permits that have been issued, but perhaps the construction project has not yet started. So, so you can kind of use it as a tool to identify potential risks that are upcoming in your neighborhood. And so that's kind of the general overview of how this tool works. And I think that covers everything I wanted to in this time, and I'm happy to answer questions, but I did want to pass it to Mapping Action Collective. And Tim, if you wanted to add anything that I missed in kind of the development of this website. Yeah.
Hi, everyone. Thanks, Lindsay. I also want to give a shout out to Randy Morris, who's on this call as well, who is a pivotal person in helping design this. Yeah, as Lindsay mentioned, I'm a developer analyst with Mapping Action Collective. Our main goal is to basically support other frontline communities, grassroots and nonprofits to help them achieve their missions and goals with decision support tools, data analysis, non-traditional data sets, et cetera. So that's kind of our bread and butter. The only thing I wanted to add really is that this type of collaboration was very effective. And, you know, having basically working with NCA along with Lindsay and the Star Lab at PSU really helped inform, particularly as we were developing the algorithm. Really, all that's happening is we're using Lindsay's algorithm, that equation that she went over, and we're basically just using that to create this visualization of ultimately what is considered medium, low, or high a potential diesel impact. And so really you can just go look in your neighborhood and see what is getting built, and B, what the actual potential diesel impact would be for that. So yeah, it was a really, again, really exciting project, and it really, I think it forces the power to have kind of this broad-based organizing strategy to try and get these types of projects off the ground. And so if anybody has any other questions regarding the design or any of the nitty-gritty without getting into too deep into the weeds of the actual programmatic aspects of the application, I would be happy to do that offline with you or share any of the code with you. This is an open source project. And yeah, that's really all I wanted to add. Lindsay did a fabulous job covering all of that. And I wanted to pass it off to Randy in case he had anything that he wanted to add as well.
Oh, thank you, Tim. Lindsay, Tim, you guys did a fantastic job explaining this. I just wanted to add one thing. The fact that we could do this at all was really contingent on the excellent data sets that were available through the city. That's not as common as a lot of people think. This kind of comprehensive construction data that goes as far back as it does and is as detailed as it is, allowed Lindsay to work her magic on it, and then allowed Mac, Tim and Mac to do the visualization on it. So props to City of Portland, and I'm sure there were county people involved in that as well. So if you get a chance to tell the data people down there that they're excellent, please do.
Thanks, Randy. So I'm gonna ask some of the questions that are coming in here. First of these questions is for Lindsay, and it's about the inclusion of actual emissions for this. Like, to what extent does your work include those? I think you talked a little bit about what you use, but just to be super clear, do you want to answer that?
Yeah, so, and I think this question specifically talked about the airport, but just to clarify, so the website doesn't really point to any actual emissions associated with the site, but as part of this work and this project, I did do field monitoring at a selected random number of construction sites just to kind of ground truth the algorithm that we created. So I did go out and measure PM. I measured black carbon mainly. I focused, which is a type of particle. So it's kind of a subset of PM 2.5 if you're familiar with that. But I did go out and sample PM 2.5 to kind of see, what types of emissions we were seeing at just random construction sites of these varying levels of like low, medium, or high. And we did find that there was a statistically distinct difference in the emissions observed at each site. So we kind of, showed that this algorithm does a decent job at kind of estimating, severity of emission levels, because it does kind of correlate with the size of the project, which makes sense, but it's good to kind of have that science to back it up.
So I hear you saying, Lindsay, that there is a limited amount of real-time emissions from certain specific places in the Portland area used in the creation of, the model itself, not so much in the what we're seeing on the screen when you look at the site. Yeah,
and getting actual emissions data is really difficult and expensive. There's essentially one DEQ monitoring station in Portland. So, a lot of air quality work relies on models, which are really helpful and can be really powerful, but also have a lot of limitations. So, we tried to do a kind of hybrid approach of some modeling and some actual measurements to kind of ground truth, what we're seeing. So hopefully that answers the question. In terms of the airport, we didn't really focus on that because airports have kind of their own stuff with emissions that includes a lot of different types of emissions. Their construction permits probably show up, because I know they're doing construction there, so those construction permits would probably pop up. But I'm not entirely sure. We didn't specifically focus on that.
Thanks, Lindsay. The next question is something that I think NCA and MAC folks were talking about right before we started this webinar. To what extent is the data that's being input real time? Specifically, when is a completed project removed from the data? And I know we talked in the presentation a little bit about how it is added before construction starts, so you can see it earlier, but maybe in terms of end date, if any of y'all want to say anything about that.
Yeah, I'm happy to, Tim, jump in if you want to, but essentially we have it set up so that it automatically removes the permit if it gets marked as final by the permit data set, I believe is how we handled that. Yeah, so essentially will get removed if it's been marked as final by the by that kind of open source data set that we mentioned that we're using. So it does update in real time. So we're really it's at the updating mercy of the city bureau.
Cool, thanks.
But it is pretty accurate, and I was happy to see that 2021 is on there now. Although we don't think any 2021 permits have popped up yet, but at least the site will be ready for when it does.
I'm not sure if we have an answer to I don't have the answer to this question, but maybe Mary, this is a question for you. Are you planning to map impacts of on-road or street diesel impact?
No, right now we don't have, we had talked about expanding, two, ideas of expanding this would either to figure out if we could take this outside the Portland metro region and replicate this, and or make it provide more visualization around indirect sources as an entity, of which construction sites are one part of. Other categories of indirect sources are distribution centers and rail yards and ports and other places where diesel engine activity is attracted to and congregates. So at that point, there has been some on-road data that's been done. Dr. George has done some studies, and I'd be happy to send some links to folks about the mapping that Dr. George has done in the past about on-road emissions. And she did that. It was real monitored data. It was using NOx as a surrogate as opposed to black carbon. But it was, demonstrated, I think, transportation infrastructure impacts in the region pretty well. And she did it through putting hundreds of sensors across the region. So it was actually monitored data. So I think there's a link for that from Tim referenced the STAR project at PSU, and we may be able to just share their website, and a lot of those reports might be on the website.
Yeah, if somebody has the wherewithal to share it in the chat, great. If not, we can maybe try and send it after the webinar. The last question that I saw, I think I can answer to the best of anybody's ability here. How do you get measurements for Central Oregon or outside the Portland metro? If anybody has contacts with folks who are doing data for any other jurisdiction, we would love to know about that, because I think, as Tim described, the reason that we have the ability to do this is because City of Portland is, through Portland Maps, giving all of this information kind of in real time. And the data is already going into something that we can pull it from very easily. So if we knew a little bit more about the way that other jurisdictions process and publicize their information about what construction is happening on a regular basis, we could absolutely try and expand. But that's really the limitation that we are dealing with, is that we only have that information for Portland right now. Also, I'm really curious to see how well this works for people. Like, if this is an effective tool that you are using and you are able to use to talk to friends about the impact of construction on our health. I don't think that most people are really thinking about that when they're seeing construction happening in their neighborhood. So your feedback is part of, deciding how far we want to go with this. I didn't see any other questions for Mac that are coming up in the chat right now. It is about 5. We typically give an extra 30 minutes if we need it, but we also want to respect people's time. Mary, anything else that we should go over before we adjourn?
Well, I'll just say we are working with the new House District 33 Representative Maxine Dexter on, we last year had worked through the petition process directly to the EQC to move forward on the indirect source rule, which would really help us get at this, at these emissions in a better way. And the EQC denied that petition, but we have re-engaged now with the state legislature to introduce that the indirect source rule as a legislative concept, and we have an LC, and it will be a bill. It was pre-session filed as a bill for the session. So we'll be communicating a lot about how you can support and talk to your representatives and help us educate folks about why we really should be moving forward with this indirect source rule, because it really is the most efficient way for us to get at this really huge source of pollution in our communities. And it really is that we demonstrated, the county and the city and public contracting have already demonstrated this is very possible. We aren't talking about, a moonshot in terms of technology. We're talking about companies meeting a standard where 80% of their equipment meets the technology standard established over 10 years ago. I mean, this is not a moonshot. It's very doable, and but companies need the incentive. We need to quit making, everything that we did on the HB 2007 to get, the truck standard in place. We still have a problem where all of this equipment that's being outlawed in our neighboring states or otherwise, moved out, but outlawed in California, we're open for business. That equipment can be used for a very long time. It's very durable. And when people have the choice to buy old equipment that is going to be legally usable in our state, that is a definite option for them. And so we would like to see, again, the incentive to make sure that Oregon isn't the dumping ground for all the bad construction equipment, that we start, I'm not sure that Lindsay, if you heard what she said, but our inventory is older than EPA's assumptions of what should be on the street. We hold on to our equipment longer here in Oregon, and we use it longer. And it is really imperative that we start accelerating the turnover into the newer standards. And again, by newer, I'm saying 10 plus years old. This is very doable, and we will be continuing to push on the policy to make that happen, and we could use everybody's support for that. So it's going to be a funky, legislative session. I'm going to figure out how to, influence and hopefully, have the type of impact that we've had where we've successfully passed the biggest clean air bill in 2018, the biggest increase in DEQ's funding in two decades. And we passed the diesel bill in 2019. So I'm really confident we can do another air quality initiative. I just have to learn, this old dog's got to learn some new tricks. So, but I appreciate everybody's help, and it's going to really be up to you guys showing up. That's how folks respond, is because people care. So that's all I really have to say, is that we're going to continue to work on the policy ideas to fix this problem. And again, I so appreciate the work of Tim, Randy, Mapping Action Collective, the incredible brilliance of Lindsay, of what she brought to this site, because to be able to visualize the solution, to be able to visualize that there is a way through is so important, and it really had never been done before. And this is phenomenal work, and I'm so proud of it and so excited to be able to have this out there. So, and thanks to my team, as always. We're always scrambling. The amount of work that Tori and Kristen do to make these webinars work is amazing, and I'm so appreciative of their time and effort and energy and just can-do attitude that we get through it. So it's a lot of real-time processing, and then ultimately, thanks to all of you for showing up, because that's what really matters, is that people stay engaged, and we hope we can continue. We've got 2 big webinars coming up. February 3rd, we're going to be looking at the Cleaner Oregon emissions inventory and Northwest Metals permit. Actually, the judge just today at Multnomah County made the decision not to lift the injunction. Northwest Metals will send out information about that company that's trying to move and restart their business in St. John's after a massive fire at their facility in 2018 at their old site. We are fighting that permit because they have nearly $80,000 in fines that they haven't paid. So our next webinar is going to be February 3rd. And it's going to be featuring Vivek Chandez from Portland State University with his research on this Cleaner Oregon emissions inventory in the Portland area, as well as then our friends at Northwest Environmental Defense Center talking about the new permit. And Commissioner Jayapal, who the chair spoke about is also going to be joining us that evening to for opening remarks. So excited about that webinar, and we'll be sending out information shortly. So thank you, everybody. Thanks again, Tim and Lindsay, our friends at Multnomah County, and my team. And thanks to everybody for showing up.
Thank you.
Keep up the good work.
Thank you, everyone.